number 3.
And we are back, folks. And when I say we, I mean the whole crew is back here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com. Sam Webb, Ira Weintraub on the other side, and my whole crew, I mean the whole MGoBlog crew. So, of course, Craig Ross, right there to my side, and Seth Fisher, right there below, and the man who started it all at MGoBlog. He said, hey, listen, I've been hurt, I've been down, but I'm not out, not this week. Brian Cook is still ailing, but he is back. He is back for the people. BC, how you doing, man?
Well, I've had a stupid month. I'll tell you that.
Well, rub some dirt on it. I think that's
All
what
right,
you did today.
fine. Yes, let's go.
We're here, Sam, but we're all playing hurt. I just want you to know that.
Here's the thing, Brian. You probably thought that by the time you came back, that there would be this settlement agreement in college football where, revenue sharing would be the law of the land. That's what they had us believe last week, last month, a few months ago. Like it was on the horizon. But the can keeps getting kicked down the road to the point now where teams are legit. Recruiters are from other schools are legitimately out there telling kids, hey, revenue share, that agreement that they're talking about, it's not happening this year. Now, they could be lying, Brian. They could be lying to these kids, just saying what they need to say to be able to make these exorbitant offers that they're making, because they want to make these high offers that aren't capped in the ways that revenue share is going to cap them. But I don't know. The longer the delay goes on, the more I'm starting to think, well, maybe this judge isn't going to have this thing in place for revenue share to be a reality this season. What say you?
Was there a news article about this? I was under the impression that there were a couple of things they needed to clean up about, like people losing their roster spots. They wanted to grandfather the current kids in, but I had not seen something to the effect of like that it's not going to happen.
No, there is nothing that says it's not going to happen. Only, you got to clean this up. That was the last thing that says you got to clean this up. What I've noticed, just coming off of Michigan's first official visit weekend and talking to recruits, is that some of these guys are saying schools are telling them that the revenue share model will not go into effect this year. Now, they could be, these schools, I grant you, could be lying to kids. I am volunteering that.
Sam, you know this stuff better than we do. How often are the things that people say on the recruiting trail
flat out lies? Yeah, no, flat out lies. But
yeah.
This is my point. These flat out lies are starting to feel like they're ringing true, when every time there's a report on this, it's about a delay, about something else that needs to be cleaned up. And the date is supposed to be July 1st, and it's already June 5th. Are we to believe that now they're going to be able to jump right into, let's say she says today, okay, everything is cool, that July 1st, they'll be able to hit the ground running with whatever model they want to put into place. I would have thought they would have had to do this months ago if that was going to be, if July 1st was.
Well, I mean, they have a framework for a deal supposed to go into effect, and it sounds like they're just trying to hammer out some details. So it seems like it's plausible that they might be able to get it done. I'm not entirely sure, though. I mean, you never really, these things can fall apart as they get close to the finish line sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you never really know until you know, but I'm going to guess it will happen, and that schools are just flat out misleading people. But that's just a guess, but I think it's going to happen. And I agree with what Brian just said, is that there are probably some elements, some details, roster sizes, perhaps, construct of walk-ons from prior years and what happens to them. I think some of these things might need to be ironed through. But I think the primary deal is more likely than not to go through. And so what you're seeing from a lot of places is smoke. But who knows? The part of it that I think is problematic is the NIL piece. That somehow this organization is going to evaluate NIL deals and see whether they're, quote, fair market deals.
Yeah.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah, that's kind of where the thing is, we're in an information vacuum right now. We don't know what they're actually haggling out the last pieces are. And so people who are out there, especially schools who are like, we need to put our rosters together right now, right? Or, walk-ons who are like, do I have a spot on this roster? Do I get to go to this school, or do I have to figure out where I'm going next fall? Those people are all pushing for some information right now. And because there's a need for information is being made up by those who make it up. And we're all guessing, right? Like, I could make a guess that they're probably trying to make something that's going to be able to not get this thing destroyed in a couple of months, right? Because part of it is going to be regulating what guys make. So I'm sure there's got to be some sort of attorneys looking at this and saying, here's what you do to make sure that, barring congressional work, this is not just going to get lawsuited to death in the first few months. That's my best guess. I think people are just filling in this empty hole right now because no one really knows.
So let me give you guys sort of a kind of a practical scenario how this affects the here and the now. Like, not down the road, but right now, because it's like big time recruiting season, official visits going on, kind of talking to kids as they go through this. If the revenue share agreement takes place, schools are going to be divvying up amongst their student athletes roughly 22 or 23 million, right? And it's going to go between, I think, 3 or 4 sports. It's like football, men's and women's basketball, and then maybe a couple of other sports. I think football share of that is going to be like 14 or 15 million. I don't know the exact number, but that's the pie. So let's just say it's 14 or 15 million dollars. If you are out and you are talking NIL with kids with that as your number, revenue share is on the horizon. It's supposed to take place July 1st. This is what we are basing our offer pool on, revenue share. And other schools are saying, hey, it's not going to happen. It's not going to take place. We don't have a pool, a $15 million pool to a ceiling to hit. We're basically capless in the offers that we can make because we don't think this is going to take place anyway. Now, are they lying? Technically, they aren't lying. Are they just telling you what they believe? And they can always come back around and say, hey, we made you this offer, but they made this judgment. They could blame it on the judge for coming up with the ruling, right? But right now they're making these offers like this ruling, like this judgment isn't going to take place. And if you're making offers like the judgment is going to take place, well, guess what? You're kind of at a competitive disadvantage in the here now, especially if it does not take place in the near future. I mean, if she rules tomorrow, that is going to be the law of the land, and you're cool. If she keeps kicking the can down the road, then you might be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, whoever is selling that vision may have some short-term edge. On the other hand, if they're selling that vision that turns out to be false, that poses a midterm to long-term problem because other schools who aren't selling that vision will remember. And so I'm not sure that that's a long-term game for anyone.
It's making a hash out of this year's cycle because usually a lot of kids are going to come on their visits in June, and then they're going to get their information, and then they're going to have their apples to apples, and then they take some time to think about it, and they commit in July and August, right? That's the normal process. And a lot of guys, we're normally getting a lot of commitments right now, but if you can't get down to like an important piece of your decision because we're waiting on this, okay, that's it's messing up the process this year. Long term, this game is not remotely over. You look at what Ohio State's trying to do, and Georgia's trying to do, or Alabama's trying to do. They want the old system back as much as possible. So what their ideal is to have this system get put in place, but have the enforcement system be just like the old enforcement system, where they don't have to pay attention to it, but someone who thinks that they have to follow the rules will pay attention to it, or have enough control over the people who are doing the enforcement, that they get to kind of use it as a weapon against their enemies, as opposed to actual fair enforcement. There is no guarantee we're going to have like a set system where the law is fair and everybody's trying to make sure this is working. Everyone's going to try to make it work for themselves, and there is a very long precedent of big schools who don't want to follow the rules wanting rules so that others will have to have a disadvantage to them. So that's part of the conversation right now, and it's not over. It's not like this settlement is going to be the last word. This settlement might only be the word for like a year or two, and then I'm sure Ohio State is trying to get Jim Jordan to pass something that's exactly what they want, right? I am positive. I don't need to talk to anybody in politics to just know that this is happening right now, because that's what they do, right?
It is. It does pass the sniff test, but I wonder about it, and I think you have to have a strategy for dealing with both possibilities. I think that's the prudent thing to do. To a reality where, hey, revenue sharing happens in the near future, and one where it doesn't. To deal with the reality of the landscape right now, where you got schools that are just life is not changing. It's for some schools. We're going to do what we've been doing, is how they're operating. If you're going to keep competing with them, you kind of got to do what when in Rome, kind of, right? I think is kind of the strategy. Meanwhile, running parallel with that, as far as from a fan standpoint, we're kind of looking at things on the college football landscape. Let's talk about playoff expansion. And it seems like the Big Ten and the SEC are at odds about the ideal model. And so I'm curious if you guys have opinions on what the best way forward is, if we assume that 16 games is coming. And it sounds like 16 games, Brian, is inevitable. If that's where we're going, is there a best 16 game model out there?
I mean,
16 team, you mean?
16
team.
16
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
like, no. Like, one of the things about the 12-team model that I thought was something that made it effective is that there's buys out there. So there is that desire to win your conference, to perform well enough to get one of those buys, and it puts more emphasis on winning a particular or losing a particular game. And like with a 16-team model, like, I mean, how meaningful would it have been if Ohio State like lost to Michigan this year in a 16-team model? Not that meaningful, but they went from looking at a bye to having to play a first-round game. Of course, they came through those games, but it meant a lot in the grand scheme of things. And in a 16-team playoff, it's just like, it doesn't really matter that much. So this is another example of the powers that be in college football not taking the long-term health of the sport into account, because they just want to fill up their bank account right now. And you see the same thing with Tony Petitti, who's been named as the guy behind the idiotic auto bid scheme. Because what he wants to do is he wants to put like a couple more Big Ten games on championship weekend so he can market them as tickets to the playoff. And that's the only reason that this cockamamie multiple auto bid scheme has come about, period, is because they just want a couple more pieces of inventory. It doesn't matter that there's no American sport where you're getting bids where conferences get multiple auto bids, because that's not fair. Like, that's one of those things where you should be dragged in front of Congress and asked to explain yourself. So I don't really have a whole lot of faith in the leadership of college football, given like what they destroyed the Pac-12 just a year ago, and they clearly have. They don't care about the structure of the sport. And you see that the guys who are in charge now, all they care about is TV because they're from TV,
Mhm.
and it's it just everything is short term. Everything is now, and that's not a good way to run pretty much anything.
What bothered me about the last football season, maybe more than anything, was the number of games I watched on TV where the stands were 2/3 empty. And I don't know if that was something that was a path that college football was on, or if it really is something to do with the current system. But in the end, if you have no one going to games, I'm not sure what you have in the sport. If it just becomes a TV game, is it anything other than EA Sports? And this is bothersome to me. It seems like it's a better world when people actually go to games. But of course, going to games is incredibly expensive, a hassle. It's weather. It's easier to sit at home and I guess drink a beer in front of the TV. And I don't know. But what happens when the day comes when on a lot of schools or you turn the TV on and it's empty. It's COVIDville. You have, these teams start
I mean,
putting.
that's true for Michigan State right now. And I'm
It
not
is.
saying that
That's
to
what I
make fun of
mean.
Michigan State.
No,
I'm
that's what I
saying that
was
their
thinking about.
fan base
and
is
that's a
so
shame.
cannibalized by this, right?
Uh-huh.
Because you look at Michigan's schedule, we had like one of the hardest schedules in history last year,
Mhm.
right? You look at Oklahoma's schedule this year, it's ridiculous the teams that they have to play.
Mhm.
And that's happening because in order to get better TV inventory, they're mashing all the best teams, all the big teams together so they can have those big TV games and they can fill out this massive inventory of big games that they want. Well, what you're losing in that process, now Michigan State is playing all the Indianas and Rutgers, and they don't feel like they have a chance to win this year, so they just their fan base turn out. They're not important anymore. And I know that this is not the forum to be saying like Michigan State matters. But I know people who Michigan State matters an awful lot to, and I know people a lot of teams. These things matter to people, and that was what was cool about this sport for a very long time. What are the big popular sports in the world? Right? It's soccer in most of the world, and it's football, college football here, and it was like that because the traditions were so strong that the people who came in to try to make the money off of it could never really wrench things into the format that they wanted because the traditions were so strong. And now everything's just up, and now we don't know who's going to be in our conference the next 2 years, right? We don't know what the next step's going to be. And I think that Michigan is we're not going to feel it as much because we're feeling on the other end. We're going to have the $500 tickets 4 times a year because we had USC come visit us last year. That wouldn't have happened otherwise, right? We're going down to Norman, Oklahoma this year. We're going to, our conference schedule is going to be ridiculous all the time. We're always going to have Ohio State, but then that Ohio State game might be one of 3 Ohio State games we play that year. And what Tony Petitti's talking about is completely cannibalizing the value of all of those games. So when you have Michigan, Oregon early in the season, you're like, that's a big game, right? And we're excited to play Oregon. And they're like, that's going to change what the Big Ten looks like. Well, no, not really, because at the end of the year, all you have to do is be in the top 4 of the Big Ten or the top 8 of the Big Ten to get into this playoff thing, to then finally be in the top 4, and then you're in the playoffs, and then you can still win a championship. It's what's the value of the game? And that's when you go back to why was this such a big deal? Why is college football such a, why are games so important? It's because every single game is the end of the world, right? Like, let's fire the coach because he lost to Minnesota. Oh, wait, we beat Ohio State next week. Yay, we're all good, right? Like, that's what this sport has always been. And if you decrease that, and that's what they're taking the value from. I don't think that they think in terms of they're taking value from anything. I think when they're coming up with these solutions, when they're trying to fill inventory, their question is, how much more can we get out of this? Where's the bottom? But they never took time to understand what they are taking it from. And we're the ones who are mostly being a take it from, and we're like, well, this is what you're taking from us.
Yeah, they look, money. Brian's right. Money is the bottom line. They're trying to squeeze as many dollars out of this as they possibly can without care or concern for what it does to competition. Adding 4 more teams is not going to make these bottom 4 teams. None of them are ever going to win they're never going to win the championship, right? This just gives them 4 more games to make money off of.
Well, I mean, like I think it's worse than that. I think that it's possible that they would. Like, people are complaining about Alabama, which of course Michigan beat in the Citrus Bowl. Wah wah wah. Like, but if they got in, I mean, they have enough talent that they could have done something. But this is a team that lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to a horrible Oklahoma team. Their non-conference schedule was like Wisconsin, who was not very good last year, and then hot garbage. They only played 8 conference games. They had no business being in that field, but they would have been in the field if it was a 16-team playoff. And I just feel like the cutoff line moving down to include an Alabama from last year, an Ole Miss from last year, I just think that's counterproductive to the drama of the regular season. I don't think I think 12 is actually a decent number, like where there's
if you have
consequences for losing some games.
Yeah, I agree. I'm lockstep with you. They don't care about competition, what it does to the regular season. Flip side, though, if I try to be glass half full about it, does this do anything when it comes to adding fans, fan interest to the postseason? Does it do anything to player retention for the postseason? We see a lot of players opt out. This is more players opting in, it would seem. At least 4 more teams of players opting in. At least 4 more fan bases opting in. More compelling games from a fan interest. At least from the standpoint of those games, not them going on runs. Is there an upside to 4 more teams in the playoffs that doesn't have to do with money?
I don't see it. I mean, you put 16 teams in, and you know what's going to be. There'll be 7 SEC teams in. You can guarantee it, and I don't want to see that. I mean,
It's still about money. It's just the question of whose money, right? If you're adding more teams, then that's the fans of those teams have to travel. They're going to have to get whatever cable or system that those games are put on.
Not all of them, right? We're talking about more home games, right?
Yeah. So either way, we're talking about the fans are going to have to pay for those tickets. The fans are going to have to pay for travel if there's going to be travel for them, right? So you're adding more. That's where the money's coming from. Instead of if you want to solve the problem of players opting out, what you can do is build that into your structure of paying them and say you get paid if you come and play in these games. But they don't want to. They don't want to cross that threshold, and so it's always this line of we can't have anything taken from us. We can't give up from the people who manage the sport. Their mindset all the time is we can't lose anything. If we're making $20 million a year personally off of this, we cannot make $19 million next year. We cannot fall back. We're giving up nothing. How can we? Let's start from there, and then let's see who we can take it from. And yeah, fine, yay, we're in the playoffs as the number 16 team. Because guess what? Michigan will probably make it more playoffs because we finished in that area too. But look what happened last year. Ohio State was done. They were dead. They lost at home 13-10 to Michigan for the 4th time in a row. Ryan Day's career in Ohio State was over, except they got to sneak into the bottom of the playoff because we expanded the playoff that far. And then they beat Tennessee and they make their little run, right? They get Notre Dame and everything. They beat those teams, and that replaces a win against Michigan. So that was the structure of their championship. And now we have a team that didn't win the Big Ten, that lost to their main rival, that lost to Oregon, right? Oregon was the best team in the country coming out of the regular season, and that doesn't matter. And you're going to get to the end of the season where you have the champion has 3 losses and 3 big wins, and a team that went out in the first round of the playoff had one rough game, or someone really prepared for them in that one time or whatever, and they have all these other huge wins and a much better season. And you don't have enough games to really tell you, even with a playoff, who was the champion. What you have are everyone's going to have to watch, right? If Michigan's the 16th team and gets in the playoff, we're going. We're going to go to whatever stadium that's at. We're going to pay for the hotels. We're going to pay for that last-minute flight. We're going to do what we have to do to go and be at that game, because that's going to be so important to our season, more important than the Ohio State game, which we just paid $500 to go to that game too. And that's where it's coming from. That's what the process that's going on is about. And the thing is, we're not going to stop. And so they're not going to stop.
I say get rid of the playoffs. Go back to the mythical national champion. It was a lot more interesting back then.
Of course.
I think we could just make it an SEC Big Ten playoff.
Yeah,
that's what they're heading towards anyway. That's what you want to do.
I find it, as much as I dislike the SEC, I find it somewhat appealing to see Sankey and Petiti at odds. Because I just have a feeling that Sankey is gonna destroy this guy. As much as I, it's self-defeating to have the Big Ten, take it on the chin. But I haven't seen Petiti get served.
Well, I don't necessarily think anyone in the Big Ten is a big fan of this idea either. Like,
really,
it's just so transparent, and so you want auto bids because you feel like you want your teams to get in when they shouldn't get in. That's the whole.
And you make more money.
That's the whole point, and it's just disgusting. And my fondest hope is for Congress to come in here and just be like, all right, we're gonna codify the House settlement. We're gonna make this all happen. Just one catch: you can't pay anybody anything if your football conference has more than 12 members. And
it would be fun sorting out the Big Ten.
Well, I mean, it's I just feel like someone needs to save these people from themselves, but that's kind of the way of the world these days,
It is, and I think in the end, I think Sankey is going to get his way. I think it's going to be 5 + 11. I do think that's because Petiti he's feckless, spineless. I think he'll get pushed around, and Sankey's vision will be the vision, and the way of the SEC and the Big Ten is the way of the playoff. That's the way it's going to go.
The problem is Sankey's too good at this, right? You want to talk about getting the number 16 team in versus the number 17 team. That's going to be Ole Miss instead of Iowa one year. Yeah. And when you look at those schedules, everyone's going to be like, oh, Ole Miss is so great because they beat Alabama this year. Even though they have 2 wins against FCS teams, they only played an 8-game conference schedule. They played Alabama at home, and they have losses in every other SEC game that they have a loss to South Carolina and Vanderbilt that year. And then Iowa trounced through the easy half of the Big Ten, because what's the Big Ten doing? We're having all our best teams play all the good teams, and all the worst teams play the worst teams all the time because money, right? Because TV deals is what Petiti cares about. And then that's where you're going to come down to an argument like that. And Sankey's just going to be so much better at getting his teams ranked 14, 15, 16. You know it's going to happen.
I think you're right. Petiti's the guy who showed up. Repeating Alan Haller's point about player safety as a reason that Michigan
really was it. That was the moment. Sometimes a guy just shows you exactly who he was, Santano. And and when that happens, right? That was the moment for Petiti. Like when he repeated holler, you're like, okay, there is no way that a person with any kind of brain or backbone or any understanding of what he's doing is going to say this. This is the most doesn't know ball comment I've ever heard from somebody in charge of ball.
So, like I said, this is why I say feckless, spineless. Sankey's gonna win. It's gonna be the SEC vision.
Well, it's also not just Sankey here, right? Because nobody else wants this format. The Big 12 doesn't want it. The ACC doesn't want it. Notre Dame doesn't want it. Nobody wants it. So unless the SEC and the Big 10 can get together and sort of strong arm it through, which again, if I was Congress, I would be calling these people in and just reading them the riot act. The upshot is just like, unless both of the major conferences are in agreement on something, it's just not going to get passed because all they try to do is consolidate power away from everybody else in college sports. So, I mean, I'm not going to be, singing Greg Sankey's hosannas because he's not on board with the dumbest idea that's ever happened.
Hey, look,
you're not quite as dumb as Tony Petitti. Great. Well done.
Right.
There are several species of orangutan that can claim that. There's only one species of orangutan. I'm sorry.
I think there's only one, but
yeah,
that's all right.
I'm sorry. That's not. It's inappropriate.
No, it's appropriate and funny.
I apologize to all the orangutans out there.
That's right.
Oh man. All right. That is a good time for a break. So that's what we're gonna do right now, because I can see Ira through his icon over there, through the screen moniker saying break, break, break. So we'll do that right now here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com.
Thank you, Sam. We are clear.
Brian, you want to talk about Yaxel a bit? You looked at him.
Yeah.
I think it would be good because you didn't have the opportunity to talk about Yaxel and how that might look on the Michigan basketball this year.
Yeah, man. So how surprised were you about Yax?
I was very surprised.
Especially
after he went to the combine and he had those measurements, which were freaky. I was like, okay, that's it. That's ball game. But got lucky.
Yeah, Dusty, man. Dusty. And he said, hey, we got second round money. And you're getting in that window. Like, this is the window. And this tells you that if Michigan, when they want to get down, they can get down. But now you got this whole revenue share thing that's, just kind of putting a little tether on things a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm surprised that the judge is allowing to stand as part of the settlement, because one, it's pretty obviously unworkable, and two, like, if there's that Texas Tech pitcher who transferred from Stanford who's getting $1 million. Like, if some oil tycoon wants to give like a kid $1 million to throw a softball, like, okay, let's redistribute some wealth here. Like, I mean, what's the problem with that? I don't get it.
I mean, exactly, and that's why I don't think their idea of this, oversight committee checking out NIL deals to see whether they relate to fair market wage has any chance of A, being plausible, B, being
well, it's
legal.
just like now like you get the black market stuff again, where it's like, okay, well, some teams are going to pay attention to some rules and other teams aren't.
Right. So you're right back.
The idea of, I think it would obviously be less of a factor because teams, like, when you can hand out $20 million plus whatever is a reasonable NIL, like, the difference between that and plus X is a lot different than like $0 and 200,000 or whatever, So I feel like
before we get back, this one for you.
Oh yeah.
Any chance of getting Gavin McKenna?
I mean, the rumblings have been kind of negative recently, but it seems like he's going to college. He's going to visit some schools. Michigan's going to be one of those schools, and his agency is CAA, which has been very, very good to Michigan. So I just don't think anybody really knows yet, then I think that people talking about the McKenna stuff earlier, who kind of sounded like, well, we're hearing Michigan, that seems like it was an assumption based on his agent.
Yeah.
But I like Michigan does have a certain je ne sais quoi for really high end hockey players, so I'm still hopeful they'll
Yeah.
get
What
him.
happened with Michigan State is they got back the Hobie Baker winner, and so I think that because where it's coming from is John Bucegras, who I think is
Well,
reacting to that.
Bucci is someone posted who seemed like who was within the Michigan State program, who was like, he got way ahead of himself like there.
Mhm.
So he does apparently has visits set up to Michigan State and Penn State.
Yeah.
So
You know, one of the things I heard is there may be some bidding war going on there for McKenna.
Back in about 20 seconds, guys.
And with Michigan State, Penn State, and also that there's a kid. Does he play at Medicine Hat, Brian? Does McKenna?
he has a line mate named Richard Ryder,
who's going to
second
MSU.
rounder. I thought he was going to BU, but
well, he's not interested in the Boston schools, but I think he has a friend on his current team that is going to Michigan
Coming back
State.
here, guys. Stand by.
That may be some of it. I don't know.
And we are back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA online at the Big1050.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Iro Weintraub on the other side. Before we get back to the MGoBlog Roundtable, I want to tell those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle, you should get on board with Brighton Ford. Go to BrightonFord.com, call 1-800-NEW-FORD, or make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. When you do, John Cuter and his crew take great care of you. Deal with deals that can't be beaten, deals like the one on the 2025 Ford Bronco Sport, $362 a month with $3,500 down, or $454 a month with $500 down. Or how about the 2025 Ford Explorer, $409 a month with $3,500 down, or $496 a month with $500 down. And last but not least, the award-winning pickup, the 2025 Ford F-150 XLT, $226 a month with $3,500 down, or $358 a month with $500 down. For those and other great deals, get on board with Brighton Ford. Go to BrightonFord.com, call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Take it out to Brighton Ford and get on board. Guys, we had a chance to react to the great, the wonderful, the surprising news that Yaxel is coming to town. That Yax has made Michigan a factor, not only in the chase for the Big Ten, or in the Big Ten race for the championship, but in the national championship picture, in the Final Four picture. We reacted to that, but Brian hasn't. So, Brian, I'll ask you first what I asked you in the break. How shocked were you? How surprised were you at the news that Yax is coming to town?
I was really surprised, especially after he went to the combine and he checked in with like a two inches more wingspan than Danny Wolf. I was like, gone. But like, he must not have heard what he wanted to hear, or Michigan. Like, it did seem like the visit kind of opened his eyes to the possibility of just coming here and having a great season, getting paid some serious coin. And so he's a coup. I mean, Michigan was in a position where they could like kind of take a swing for the fences, and it paid off for him. And it's lines up for a pretty exciting season. Now, I watched a bunch of Yaxel's season, and I think that given the things he was asked to do, his production level was extremely impressive. So his team's offense has been like top 60 like the last few years, and I was like, oh well, this guy must know something about putting together a nice offense. But then you look at it, and it's Buzz Williams the whole way, where they're not good at getting shots. What they're good is they're getting offensive rebounds, and they don't turn the ball over much. So it's kind of a chuck-a-luck kind of offense. It works for them on a decent level, but what I saw is a lot of Yaxel Lendenborg being asked to run isolation from outside the three-point line. And that worked for him at that level. I don't think it's going to work for him in the Big Ten. But that doesn't mean that Dusty May can't scheme up ways to get him that half step on a guy. That's all he's going to need. So he's not a pull-up three-point shooter. So if he's, isolated outside the 3-point line, the guy could just sag off of him. And he's not, crazy athletic where he can, as a 6'9" guy, just blow by a dude who's sagging off. So what happens is he got into the elbow area a lot and took a lot of questionable jumpers. He hits them in a 36% clip, but 40% of his twos were other twos. And you compare that to Wolf, where 24% of Wolf's twos were other twos. So moving to Michigan, he's going to lose some efficiency because the defenders will be taller and bigger and better. But I think if they can shift more of his usage to the rim, that's going to keep that extremely high O rating up, and he's going to be a really good player. So I've started digging into Elliot Cadeau, who's I don't know if he's good, but I think he can be good. So the thing that really jumped out to me is you look at UNC's percentage of shots at the rim, and it's 37% when Cadeau's not on the floor, and it's 45% when he's on the floor. That's a huge gap. So when he's on the floor last year, like UNC was like 21st or 25th in terms of getting up shots at the rim, and they were in the 200s when he was on the bench. So this is a guy who shifts usage to the rim. And, for me, he can cut down on his turnovers a lot just by like chucking the ball at the rim. Because with Morez Johnson and Mara
yeah.
and Axel Lendenborg, this team just like screams Kobe assist. And that's I'm going to be looking to see like what they're going to do with Roddy Gale, because I want Gale getting downhill and just getting shots up, getting free throws, because if he draws a second guy, like boxing out on the weak side is going to be close to impossible. So, there's still some questions about like fit and shooting and stuff, but I expect this to be a very, very good team. And, if Purdue wasn't returning basically all of their production and getting a 7'4" guy back from injury, I'd be very confident about winning the Big Ten. As it is, I think Purdue's going to be one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing to me is, well, first on Yaxel, I've watched him more than I had last week, and he's not a bad 3-point shooter when he spots up. He's 33, 36 range when he's spotting up. The problem is when off the dribble, he doesn't shoot the three at all. He can't shoot it off the dribble. But otherwise, go ahead.
One unassisted three last year. Everything else was catch and shoot.
Yeah, so he's okay as a catch and shoot, but not off the dribble. But the other question I've got, and maybe you've noticed that someone said, maybe it was on Dylan's board, that they were concerned about his left hand. But on the tapes I watched, when he needed to use his left hand, he could mostly. So that one bothers me a little less. The interesting thing to me is, though, Dusty saying that at the end of last year that Michigan just didn't play fast enough, which I thought was a little wacky. On the other hand, his vision is we played pretty fast, but not nearly fast enough. And I think with Yaxel, I think he feels like they can play faster, and Cadeau. I think he feels with Yaxel and Cadeau, they can play faster. I don't know if that really makes sense, but that's in his vision of this team.
Your pace was always gonna be slowed by having a true post guy, like a true low post guy, like he had in Vlad, and that being for a stretch of the season your best offense.
Yeah.
So
well, but Vlad only got 68% of Michigan's minutes last year, so the pace sometimes felt a little counterproductive because Vlad would get gassed and you have these possessions where you weren't putting your best lineup out there. But with both Mara and Johnson on the team, you can run those guys ragged for 20 minutes each, and you can get up and down, and you can have those guys go at maximum effort. You don't have to worry about foul trouble that much. Like, neither of those guys is nearly as polished as Golden, but I feel like between the two of them and the ability to have one of them out there at all times and not have to compromise your size. Like I think it's going to add up to about where Golden was last year, unless Mara like there's some chance that Mara gets some conditioning, gets a little bit better at basketball, and just has a breakout season. Because the only thing that was holding them back last year was minutes.
Yeah,
Like
I think I'm really optimistic. I mean, so he was injured for part of the season, and clearly he didn't respond to Mick Cronin's coaching. I think the change of scenery, health, a usage plan that I think will be suited to him because Dusty clearly will know how to use him. I think is gonna bring out maybe not what he did against Wisconsin every night, but closer to that kind of threat level on the floor, which is why he looks at that as like, hey man, I could play like this, and Mick Cronin wasn't, even when he was healthy, giving him the kind of minutes that he thought he deserved. So
well, no, there's like rumors that he had like mono and other stuff. Like his playing time just never really made a whole lot of sense. But if you look at his rates, like just ignoring like just the counting stats, they're crazy. Like 26% usage, 117.0 rating, offensive rebound rate of 17, which is insane, a block rate of 17, which is also insane. Like if this guy can stay on the court, he's going to be crazy good, especially because like he's a big, right, and he's a 7'3" big. These guys take time, so like his progression isn't, he's not where Namari Burnett is, right? Like I'm expecting Namari Burnett to be Namari Burnett. Like Mara is a guy who's still on that upward curve, and if he can just get out there for 60% of Michigan's minutes, like that's going to be pretty impressive to see, I think, because like he was a 5-star, like top 10 recruit, and despite being from Spain, like that's kind of hard sometimes. They don't get, those guys get ranked that high. Like he has all the upside in the world, and I mean, I'm really hoping that at some point Michigan's playing UCLA and Mick Cronin is just dying inside. Because he's like, we lost Fran, right? And so now Mick Cronin is like the funniest coach in the Big Ten, and like the way his teams play basketball is dire sludge ball. It's not Fran's just like I don't care about defense stuff, but just in terms of like, can I watch this man coach and feel joy at his depression? Yes, yes, I can. So I was mad at Cronin earlier last year, but now he's a treasure. We need him in the league.
So you mentioned the holes, and I asked Craig and Seth about this last week. But where do you think the outside? Because that's my biggest concern is shooting on this team. Where do they get it other than Namari?
Well, so both Yaxel and Cadeau were solid spot-up shooters a year ago. But the context of their teams were such that they really didn't get a whole lot of opportunities to catch and shoot because they were the primary playmakers on their teams. Now, with both of those guys on the same roster, sometimes Yaxel's going to be driving, he can kick out to Cadeau or vice versa. I think you're going to get more attempts from both of those guys, and they're going to hit at a pretty good clip. And then you have, I'd say, 3 freshmen who all have the potential to be a bench shooter who can be a useful piece of the team. And, McKinney is a guy who was a 36% guy. I think Winters Grady was around 40%. And, is it Liburd or is it Liberd?
I think it's Ricky Liburd.
Okay. And Liberd's like purported stats are a little goofy. Like he 49% from 3 last year in high school. So like if one of those guys can step up, and then I think for me, it's like, I'm really hoping that you can get a glow up from LJ Kason, because, his numbers last year were pretty bad, like an O rating in the 90s. He was in the 20s as a 3-point shooter. But, when Gale took 3-point shots and missed, I was like, this is hopeless. And when Kason missed, it felt like every single time it rimmed out. And so there's like I feel like he has upside to be a solid or even better 3-point shooter. He's a guy who can, be the backup point guard, but also kind of give you some more shooting. And really the only guy who I'm like super concerned about is Gale. Like, I don't think that he's ever going to get to 30%. I think that's something you just have to live with. But the rest of the roster seems like they've got enough, because I think the defense is going to be pretty good. Like, that's something that's underrated about Cadeau, is that he's an excellent on-ball defender. And then you have the two guys at center who are outstanding rebounders, and Mara's could be like the guy who leads the country in block rate, and you have Yaxel, who's going to be in that vein of a very switchable four. He can pick up where Wolf left off. He has the wingspan. He's a 15 pounds lighter, so hopefully he'll have even a little more lateral mobility. So I feel like shooting's a little bit of one, and then it's just turnovers, because Cadeau does come with a turnover rate which is 2 points higher than Wolf had last year. And like, I love Danny Wolf, but also I fantasize about putting him in a big rocket and shooting him into the moon occasionally. Right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you're just like, all right, that's enough for now, Danny. We're going to put you on the moon. And like, Cadeau does that too.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of feel like if they're going to play fast, if they're going to integrate a bunch of new players, I don't feel like the turnover rate is going to be Beeline era.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
But
We gotta go.
conversely, this team should kill it on the offensive boards,
yeah, that's
and
it.
so
But
they'll
I
make
think
up
we
for some of the.
Yeah.
think we got to go though.
We do.
Oh,
We do
sorry.
have to go. When we come back next week, we should have some news from the Committee on Infractions, so we'll be able to react to that. And we'll see you then. Until next MGoBlog Roundtable, we'll see you guys, the rest of you, tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK, online at thebig1050.com.